Morning, everybody. Trying to warm the shop up a little bit here. It's warmer than the other day. I'm gonna grab a cup of coffee and we'll get to this. We'll get to today's video here. Got a bit of a runny nose. Trying to get this fire going. It's giving me some fits this morning. Once again, good morning, everyone. 42 degrees in the shop. Thank you for joining me on Kenny's Life Thoughts in Retirement. I made a few notes, and this is kind of a follow-up to my last posted video. This one I'm calling "We Have More in Common Than You Think," and back in 2007, I started working for a wholesale distribution company that had manufacturing capabilities, and I ran the manufacturing facility. I was the general manager for this facility, and we made things like moldings, hardwood floor, mostly hardwood, some softwood, but mostly hardwood lumber, moldings, stair treads, you name it, we made it. And then we also had a panel processing side of the business where we took sheet stock, melamines, high pressure laminates, and made cabinet parts and furniture parts out of it, and we sold them to our clients. So there was two sides of the business, but it was all under one roof, and I was the general manager for the entire facility. And in 2007, I took over this facility, and it was in pretty disarray, I guess is a good way of putting it. It was hemorrhaging money, and didn't have a lot of confidence in the marketplace, especially with the wholesale company that I worked for. Most of the employees didn't believe in this thing, and it was pretty much a nightmare. So I had quite a task ahead of me to try to get the thoughts changed on this particular facility. Anyway, enough of that. So there was an employee there who he was in his late 70s. I don't think he was in his early 80s yet, but he was definitely in his late 70s. He was on the millwork side of the business. His nickname was the Wood God. So if you had any issue about finding a certain kind of hardwood or softwood for that matter, he knew how to resource it. He'd been doing this a long time. He'd been in this business all of his adult life, and like I said, he's in his late 70s. And he basically would research, find the wood, tell someone to go buy it, or he would buy it himself. And he also fed the machines. He was one of the guys out in the warehouse on a forklift. He fed the machines whatever they needed and made sure that they had plenty of lumber there to manufacture the things that they were getting ready to manufacture. So, but I took over the facility and had to make a lot of personnel changes, some fairly drastic and some not so drastic. But this particular individual, from the minute I started with this company, he just kind of looked down his nose at me, if you will, or didn't give me a lot of respect. And so he never outwardly told me he didn't like me or anything, but you could just tell by his actions he wasn't real thrilled about my being there. Again, he'd been doing this all of his adult life, and he's been around a long time, and people respected him. But on the other hand, I was starting to get some complaints about him, concerns about him, nothing to do with his age or anything, but it was his safety, the way he operated himself around other human beings and around the machines that were in this facility. We had millions of dollars worth of machines in this place, and about 35 people, roughly. In the beginning, it was more than that, but we whittled it down to about 35. Anyway, he was lifting stacks of lumber, on his forklift overhead over people's heads, and he'd bump into equipment every now and then. So I had to have, and he'd been getting away with it for a long time. Prior management basically just ignored him and gave him a wide berth. And unfortunately, that's just not in my personality, especially when it comes to the subject of safety. So I had to have a conversation with him and trying to find some common ground with him. And it was very challenging, but this conversation was necessary. And so I'm having this conversation with him this particular day. And I'm trying again to find common ground with him and talking to him about some of the concerns that his team members are having. And, of course, he got defensive. Just leave me alone, I want to just let me do my job. And I said, well, we have to abide by safety regulations, and went into the whole spiel about the importance of it. And then he started talking about his experience. He wanted to make sure that I knew that he was a very experienced person in the industry, which I had already known that, but I had no idea where he had worked prior to him coming to work for this company that we were working for. But he wanted to tell me about his experiences, the good old days of how they used to unload containers, the rail cars of lumber by hand. They would do it by hand, which is a very labor intensive. If you imagine a whole rail car full of hardwood lumber, you had to unload it piece by piece, one at a time. And then the place that he used to work for, they had to put it up into a loft, all done by hand, very little forklift, interaction. And so, of course, he's going on and on and on, talking about all his vendors that he's bought lumber from in the past through the last 50 years and how he knows what he knows. And I totally, was encouraging him and saying that, yes, you're very well known and very well liked, but we still have to make sure that we're doing things in a safe way here. And so anyway, he's talking to me, and all of a sudden, I hear him. I can hear him talking, but I can't. I hear him talking, but I'm not really focused on what he's saying. And I caught myself. I was sitting at my desk, and he was across from me. And off to my left, I had a old school calendar hanging pinned to my wall there, to my pin board there, and I'm sitting there, and I can hear him talking. He's telling me all about his stuff, but I'm not really paying attention because all of a sudden I'm losing interest in his conversation, and I'm staring at the calendar. And I realize that it's the 1st of April, and again, it's the year 2007, and so I kind of come back to him talking. I said, Gordon, did you just say that you worked at at Emerson Hardwood? And I said, yeah. He said, yes. Yeah, kid. That's what I've been telling you for the last 5 minutes where I worked, and what my experience is. And I said, well, so you were there back for how long? And he told me how many years. It was a long time, going way back. And I go, okay, well, so you were a warehouse guy out in the plant, right? He goes, yeah, that kid, that's what I was doing. I'd hand unloaded rail cars of hardwood and this and that, blah, blah, and he would go on and on and on and on. And so I go, well, Gordon, do you realize, or do you recall back in 1967, a truck and trailer versus a car vehicle accident that happened out on Front Avenue? Emerson Hardwood basically is right on Front Avenue. Now, at the time, I had no idea. I knew approximately where my daddy's accident happened. I knew it was on Front Avenue for sure, and I knew he was southbound. But I had no idea where at on Front Avenue he was. And I just by happen chance, I'm talking to this gentleman, and I asked him the question if he remembered or if he recalled an accident out on Front Avenue. And I go, it would have been a pretty loud accident. He goes, oh. And he just kind of, he didn't go white in the face, but his facial expressions went real blank. And he kind of looks at me, sits back in his chair, and he leans back and he goes, well, why do you ask me that? I said, well, I just want to know, do you remember an accident? He goes, yeah, kid, I'll never forget it. I'll never forget that day. And I go, well, explain to me what happened. Do you know what happened? He goes, well, yeah, I was out. I think he said he was loading a truck or something. And it was getting towards the end of the day. And all of a sudden, he hears the squeal of tires and the crashing of, obviously a vehicle accident. And so he stops what he was doing, and he's telling me all this. And he goes, I was the first one on this particular accident scene because, I was outside. I was close by to it, and I walked over to the scene, could see that the driver of the vehicle was deceased, and the driver of the truck was milling around in a bit of shock, apparently. And he goes, but I'll never forget it. He goes, again, why are you asking me about this? And I said, well, Gordon, I think that we all have a lot more in common than you realize. And he goes, well, what do you mean? And I said, well, that person that was in that vehicle was my dad. And he goes, what? I go, that person if it happened in the beginning of April. He goes, oh yeah, it was the beginning of April. He goes, I don't remember exactly what date. It was within the first week of April. He could remember that. He remembers it was 1967. And he remembers the accident out on Front Avenue. So and he goes, it was the only one. There was no other accident that I can recall that was like that. He goes, it was it was a traumatic accident. It was a bad one. And so, obviously 2 and 2 together, it had to be the accident that I've been talking about in last video and today. And he just kind of sits there and he's in a bit of shock about it after I told him that. And he goes, that was your dad? And I go, yeah, that was my dad. He didn't make it home that night, obviously. And he goes, well, I'm just so, I'm in a bit of shock. And he's got his head down, and he's not overly emotional because, I don't know if it's his generation or what, but he wasn't a lot of emotion, but you could tell like the wind had been taken out of his sails a bit. And he said, I'm just real sorry that had happened. He goes, how old were you? And I go, well, I was pretty young. I was 3.5 years old. And he just goes, oh, wow, that's tragic and that's terrible. And he goes, I'm just real sorry, really sorry, kid. That's what he said to me. Now, he went, we kind of ended the meeting, and, we shook hands. And he says, oh, you know what? I'll do better. I'll be careful. I'll try to be more careful. And, he kind of sort of took ownership of the issues, although not really. And then he left my office, went down he was buddies with the sales staff in my office there, and he went down and told them about this story. And of course, they all came to me, later on in that day, and you know, thought it was a strange story and almost unbelievable, but it happened, and I don't think it was coincidence either. Sometimes I think about these things, and I wonder, well, is it coincidental that I came across this gentleman's path in light of knowing that he was, the first one on my dad's accident scene. He was out there, doing his job, and this, and now I'm talking to him 40 years later. It was on the 40th anniversary, 1st of April, 1967 to 2007. It's 40 years that this all kind of came to light with this gentleman. And, I try to justify in my mind, well, how did this happen? Was it just purely coincidental? What are most people going to think about this story, I guess? Uh, am I crazy? I don't think so. I know it happened, and I'm not sure if this gentleman is still alive or not. I mean, I lost touch with him after we departed that company we worked for, and I lost touch with him. But it certainly was something that got my attention for sure, and I'll never forget it as long as I live. Again, I'm focused. Something was coming over me, and whatever that was, it was just weird. My brain started to look at that calendar, and I'm thinking, "Oh, wait, what's going on? Why am I focused on my calendar?" And then I started to focus on this gentleman, and that story came out. So again, I think we're all a lot more connected than we realize, and we have a lot of things in common. And this gentleman and I found some commonality even in the face of tragedy. Now, he still didn't like me very much, even knowing, I was just a younger guy coming in, some young whippersnapper. He's got all these grandiose, big-time fun ideas. I'm going to make the world a better place. And he wasn't having any part of it. So, hi, baby. Come over here. Grace wants my attention. She says it's a little bit cold out here. Why don't you come over here and lay down? Fire's starting to kick in. It's almost 50 degrees now. So that's my story today. Something that had happened, and that was back in the 1st of April, 2007. And gosh, that's going on almost 20 years ago now. Time flies. That's basically what I had for this video. I really do appreciate you subscribing to my channel, and commenting on the videos. I love hearing all the comments, and I know that as time goes on, hopefully I get more comments and maybe some similar stories that we could share together. But I'm having a lot of fun doing this. How long I'll do it for, I don't know. But I'm a relatively pretty shy person, as a lot of people know, and I have to work real hard at coming out of my shell. I always have all my life. I've been very, very shy most of my life, and some people look at that and they think I'm a little bit snotty or snooty or stuck up or something, but really I'm far from any of those things. But I am very shy, and it sometimes can come across as me being a little bit snooty or whatever. I try not to be that way, but it's just, things happen. But being shy and doing this is not a challenge, but I'm having fun doing it. And I'm having fun trying to think of content and some of the stories that I have that I want to tell people. Hopefully this story here, you'll enjoy, and if you have any comments about it, I'd love to hear them. The main reason for obviously the channel for me, it's not a retirement channel. I've said that before. It's not a retirement channel per se, but it's more of a, now that I am retired and I have some time on my hands, I'm also able to think about my life and think about, where I came from, and where I've been and where I'm going. And, I like reflecting and thinking about the past. I try not to live in the past, but I do think about the past, and I can't help it. Again, my brain has memories in it that I don't jettison. And so I think the past helps to, um, formulate who we are. And my past is my past, and everyone has their own. And I have some stories that I want to tell, and hopefully, I can continue this on because I am having a lot of fun doing it. My fire's going. Feels good to have a fire going. It's a lot warmer today than it was the other day. Anyway, I appreciate you all, and be sure to be safe and be well, and to make good choices. Enjoy the day.